Well, ladies and gentlemen, we've got another update on the current trade situation, the trade deals that are coming down the pipeline. We've got another one now. It's been reported. There's a few updates I want to give. Remember, the big whopper, the one that we wanted to get done, the one with China, that, according to both Trump and China, has been completed. We've got this other deadline, which is July 9th, which is the initial deadline, the 90-day period in which the window was enacted by Trump to negotiate when Trump hit everyone originally with the Liberation Day tariffs, which ballooned all the tariffs, and then he brought it down to a 10% flat rate global tariff. Trump has said he's very likely going to tariff these countries possibly more than the current 10% rate, but we will work out trade deals, and we do have a trade deal with Vietnam now. We got one with the UK where we kept around a 10% tariff on certain sectors. We got one with China where we kept a 30% tariff on them. And now we've got a deal with Vietnam. Trump says the terms are that Vietnam will pay the United States a 20% tariff on any and all goods sent into our territory and a 40% tariff on any trans-shipping. So Trump hitting Vietnam with around a 40% tariff. And I'm just going to explain the entire concept because people still don't understand this, and liberals are just, and this is the last time I'm going to do it because I'm just tired of it. They're now trolling and they think it's like this thing, but this is just the reality of the fundamental situation with tariffs and how it pays and how it works out, because they're like, oh, the American consumer are now going to be paying 40% more for goods from Vietnam. Number one, that's not the point of tariffs. The point of tariffs is to encourage the companies that are getting goods from Vietnam to produce them domestically. Number two, obviously that's not how the tariffs have worked out. The corporations, the companies, they're the ones that are eating the overall tariff costs. And also what you'll get is Vietnam will start producing things for even cheaper to try and be able to be more attractive, even with the tariff tethered to them, what the 40% tariff, because they're so desperate to be involved with the US consumer base. So a lot of the times you'll get Vietnam or China or some of these other countries who do trade with the United States. Vietnam, we can tariff them more aggressively because we trade with them less. So the fact that we tariff with them more, it's not going to be catastrophic to where it's going to balloon prices. And I really think Trump is trying to see how much he can get away with. I mean, he originally put the mass tariffs on, the Liberation Day tariffs, where Vietnam had like a 90% tariff. And South Korea had, like I said, I mean, all these countries, they were crazy numbers. And obviously, things went a little bit wonky. You had the yield, the 10-year yield spike up, and Trump had to bring them down. But now we're at a point to where we've had this tariff number where it's 30% on China, 10% on everyone else, in for a few months. It hasn't been inflationary. We've seen either the U.S. companies have to eat the price, and you say, well, why would they do that? Because it's a capitalist society and they have to be competitive. They're going to price themselves out of the market. If you have somebody producing domestically and another company comes in and undercuts them by making things cheaper overseas, and then Trump decides to raise the tariff, and so now the company that uses the overseas, that uses Vietnam, that uses China is paying more. If they want to be competitive and keep their prices lower than the domestic company, they can't raise them. If they raise them, they will sell less because it's a competitive capitalist market. So that's the reality on why these companies will eat the tariffs, because it is a competitive market. Now, in some cases, if they have a monopoly over the market, then yes, they could be, able to raise the prices because they're not competing with anyone of substance. But as we've seen, at least over 3 months, and they'll still try and argue, they'll say, well, this is just, we haven't seen the lag yet to it. Once we see it, there's going to be bad things that happen in Q3, Q4. I'm not buying it. I think we already would have seen it. They were already with the narrative that Q1, Q2 was going to create a recession. They said Q2 would be negative GDP. It's not even close. Now they're trying to say, well, it's imports versus exports. That's the only reason why it's positive in Q2. We wouldn't have even had a contraction in Q1 if Trump would have printed more money. It was a contraction of 0.5%. And I'm using the revised number. It was really a contraction of 0.3%. They revised it. They're going to revise it again probably in a few months and bring it back down to 0.3%. But the point is, these people just it's the same thing over and over. I'm done with it. They keep saying, oh, it's a 40% tariff. The U.S. consumers will pay for it. Well, obviously not. Why has Trump hit China with a 30% tariff the last 4 months? Things haven't gone up. It would show up in the core inflation data. It's not showing up. The only thing they can cope with is, oh, there's a long lag period. That's it. So see, they keep lying and just you're not interpreting it correctly. You cannot say that Trump has caused inflation when in his first 4 months, 3 of them, actually I believe all 4 of them, even though 1 month the inflation was higher, all 4 months the actual number came in lower than the projected number, the inflation rate on the core inflation. So how is that? The inflation has been tamed. This is a weird thing we're dealing with where people think Trump is causing inflation. Nowhere is that being reflected. It doesn't exist. This idea that the American consumers are going to have to pay for more, obviously not. I mean, it depends on how competitive the sector. But no, when you're in a capitalist society, even if these companies are getting things from Vietnam and they're forced to pay a 20% tax or a 40% tax, you say, well, they could just raise their prices. They're going to price themselves out. They're not going to be competitive in the U.S. market. So see, that's why they can't understand it. And on top of that, Vietnam and China, they're so entrenched and so in need of our consumer base and how rich we are that they will do things to make production cheaper so they could bring the prices down of the U.S. companies buying it, so then the U.S. companies can afford to pay the 40% tariff. They will lower their labor costs. They will lower different things to make it to where they still want U.S. companies to buy from them. So it's a lot more complicated than just, oh, they're going to raise their prices by 40%. American companies are, because they don't want to pay a 40% tariff. And if they have to pay a 40% tariff because they want to make revenue, they're going to have to, it's not that simple. It's not that simple. And obviously it's not that simple. Trump's had a 10% global tariff on this entire time, and inflation has been lowered. And you could say, well, 10% is not that much, but Trump is seeing how much he can get away with these countries. I mean, when you talk about Vietnam, we don't do a ton of trade with them. They're a smaller country. You can put a higher tariff on them, try and make more money off of it, make more revenue, and people have to understand, unless we see the tariffs become inflationary, what is the point? We're raking in money. Obviously, the things haven't gone up in price. We would be reflective in the inflation data. The only thing they can say is, oh, it's a lag. So that's basically what's going on. And then Trump also says that Vietnam is going to give the United States total access to their markets and trade, saying they will open their markets to the United States, meaning that we will be able to sell our product to Vietnam at 0 tariff. So we get 0 tariffs. And so this is another good deal for Trump. Now they'll try and spin it and say, oh, the U.S. consumer is paying 40%. No, we've had 10% global tariffs on every country except for China, and China was 30%. So why are we not seeing why is that not inflationary? So they don't have actual logic, because the numbers show it's not inflationary, and Trump still somehow has, an approval rating on inflation at -20, -30. It's gone down. Now, I understand you could say, well, because of the last 2 or 3 years, or maybe the last 3 or 4 years with Biden and how catastrophic inflation was, people aren't going to necessarily feel it. Although, if you want to look at energy prices and gas, I mean, gas is one of the things people judge the economy off of. And it's not like Trump. I mean, you can do certain things to bring gas down, but it is a global market. I mean, gas has gone down. So look, we'll see what happens with this. This is another good deal by Trump. I think with Trump, he's hinted, he said, well, July 9th, and he got very angry with Japan, and apparently we're just going to tariff them at maybe like, what was it, 50% or something, or 30%? Yeah, we're just going to hit them with a pretty big tariff because they don't want to cooperate in these negotiations. I think we're going to reach a deal with India. I think we're going to reach a deal with the EU. We're probably going to reach a deal with South Korea. But there are going to be countries that we don't reach deals with, and we're just going to slap a tariff on them. And it's probably going to be above 10%. My guess is Trump is looking at these numbers, and Bessent is looking at these numbers, and they're saying, well, we could probably get away with trying to bring in more revenue. And then here's another thing. These people, they just have zero concept for how the deficit works and debt. They're like, oh, Trump talks about making around $22, $23 billion per month, whether or not that's true, because we hear different numbers. But he said It's been 88 billion over the first 3 or 4 months, and so 22 or 23 billion in revenue, tariff revenue. People say 23 billion, that's nothing. We have a deficit of $2 trillion. Well, number one, 1 trillion is interest payments. So we really have a deficit in terms of government spending of 1 trillion. The other trillion is interest payments on 37 trillion in debt that we currently have. That's number one. Number two, it's 23 billion per month, not yearly. So if you factor 23 billion, and maybe some months it'll be more, maybe some months it'll be less, that's around 250, $300 billion. $300 billion. Even if you want to factor in the interest and add that and say it's $2 trillion in debt, that's a significant amount, $300 billion. And then they say, well, the consumer pays it. No. Why is the inflation not going up? You have to prove it. You have to prove it to me. Go prove it. Go prove it in actual numbers, not anecdotal. Ooh, the little rice went up in price. No. I need overall metrics. Show me. They can't. They have no metrics. So they just say the same thing over and over again. Like, oh, the consumer is paying 23 billion. Really? Then where's the inflation? Why is it not reflective in overall inflation rate? Oh, because it's a lag. Then why did you tell me we were going to have a recession with a negative growth rate in Q2? Oh, that's just exports versus imports. See how they keep coping and changing it? And they're just going to, when you go against the Trump economy, you will lose 100% of the time. You don't have the data. You don't have the facts on your side. We have all the indicators. We have $23 billion with basically no inflation. And now we're saying, well, we've reached the equilibrium where evidently these companies are not raising their prices because they have to pay an extra 10% tariff. So let's raise the tariffs a little bit and see how much we can get away with. And we've got massive leverage over these smaller countries. They need our consumer base. They need access to it. So we're going to do a deal where we slap on a 40% tariff and there's a 0% tariff on our company selling in Vietnam. Because we can. That's basically it. Because we have such an impressive, powerful consumer base that spends so much. And a lot of these companies in Vietnam, they're going to lower their labor costs. They're going to make it to where their products are even cheaper to counteract the tariff that American companies are going to have to pay to bring their products in. That's probably what's going to happen. But no, people say it's the American. This is what they say. They say Vietnam's not going to change anything. They're going to keep their prices the way they are. The American companies are going to buy the stuff at a 40% tariff, and then they're going to upcharge U.S. consumers 40% in a capitalist competitive market. Yeah, that'll go over real well. I mean, I guess it depends what sector you're in. But a lot of the time, I mean, what we've seen is that hasn't happened. So that's really the point of this, and it's just the same stuff over and over again. They have no indicators. They've got nothing. And we've got 4.5% growth rate Q2. We would have had growth Q1. It's irrelevant. We had a 5% contraction. Oh, no, 0.5% contraction, excuse me. It doesn't matter now. And these people think that the tariffs are going to cause a recession in Q3, Q4 with this bill that they're passing. Oh, this bill is only going to help even more supercharge the economy. And so that's why they're saying, well, it's terrible. All the tax cuts, because they know that this is going to give people a ton of disposable income. This Q3, Q4 is just going to be great, and it's going to be sustainable. And it's just like 2018, 2019, the window. We're going to bring. I mean, they're just talking about getting rid of Powell, because Powell is. We need the 2% interest rates by next year. We need the 2% interest rates. Trump has tamed the inflation. We are making money off of the tariff revenue, but we need the interest rates at 2% by next year. We have 2% interest rates, 2% inflation, core inflation, 2% trueflation, maybe under 2% trueflation based off of what the energy's been doing. And so you see this, and this is the golden time. When you have 2% interest rates, 2% inflation, yeah, that was 2019. And so we're going back to that now. See, it takes time, slowly but surely. Sure, there's some bumps, there's some things, the Liberation Day, whatever. The point of it is it's on track right now, and you now you can start ramping it up on these smaller countries. Ramp the tariffs back up. We want more revenue. We want 30 billion per month. We want 35 billion, 40 billion. and then they say, well, the American consumers pay it. Well, then why is it not reflective in inflation? What data are you gonna use data to back that up or no? You understand competitive markets in the United States. Sometimes they can't raise their prices. They're gonna price themselves out. They're gonna have to produce, or they can produce domestically. You're not gonna pay anything. Produce domestically, you don't pay anything. So it's either one. It's either one. That's a whole nother thing. It's like we're supposed to feel bad for these companies who are slapped with a 30%, 40% tariff. You know, in some cases, yes, the items. There are other countries. I don't hate trade necessarily. The term fair trade is not correct. It's not fair because we don't have the same labor laws. So how is it fair trade if we don't have the same labor laws and other countries can produce things for significantly cheaper than the United States? That's not what fair trade is. The concept of it doesn't make sense because everyone is not operating on the same playing ground in terms of how much it costs to produce something. But I mean, I agree. I think certain countries are experts in the production of certain goods, and we should trade with them. Absolutely, but you know, at a certain point, it's like we have to produce more domestically. But it's not even necessarily about producing domestically. It's about being able to utilize our consumer base to, create revenue for us. And I mean, they're doing it in a way to where obviously it's not inflationary. Otherwise, there's no way Trump would re-up these tariffs. If these tariffs were inflationary, why would he double down on them from the 10% and now it's back up to 20%, 40%, whatever it is? With China, I think it's at around 30% still. And I'm guessing that's what the trade deal is. It's around a 30% tariff. So you're not going to double, triple down on these things. And then it seems like the tariffs are going to go up on a lot of these smaller countries we do less trade with. I mean, we'll see how it ends up working out. But right now, I mean, we're not seeing inflation spike. We're seeing it stabilize. And now many of the experts within the economy are saying, yes, they need to cut the rates. The tariffs are not raising inflation. It has to happen. And that's why they're pressuring Powell. Whether or not Powell will do it, we'll have to see. But either way, guys, that is going to do it for this video. Make sure you like the video down below. Also follow me on X. Link to that's always in the description.